Hello and welcome to my series on creativity in the Enneagram. I'm Samantha Mackay, founder and coach at Individuo. And today I'm talking with Naomi Gora, a self-preservation 9, an INFP, owns her own business specializing in marketing and branding for personality types, which she's going to tell me more about shortly. But tell us a little bit about you before we dive into creativity.
Oh, so yes, I'm Naomi. As you mentioned, I have my own branding marketing business where I use personality types and values to help people show up more authentically in their businesses. And I live in Tassie. I'm a consistently blocked creative. Or I have been since working with Samantha. It's really unfolding. And yeah, I've just always considered myself a creative person, but have sometimes lived in the shadow artist world.
It can be so hard sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And so the hypothesis for this series and the research I'm doing around creativity and Enneagram is that we're all creative. And yet it's often only the descriptions for type 7 and 4 that say, those are the creative types. And I'm really curious as to what creativity looks like for all 9 types. And so I'm hoping to interview all 9 types and maybe even all 27 subtypes, but we'll see where we get to in that journey. And so the place to get started with is, what does creativity mean to you, both, potentially in the abstract, but also in the concrete?
It's a really good question. So I don't know if this is an INFP thing. I feel like it is, but maybe other INFPs will disagree. But creativity to me has always been a bit romantic. Like it's this romantic sort of love story, really intense feelings that when you create, it should feel like this magical thing. It should be a story, and it should evoke those feelings in other people as well. So some people that get into creativity that are like really into like abstract art or things like that, I've never really understood that side of creativity. For me, it's always about a feeling. I don't know if that's a 9 thing. I don't know. That's what we're exploring.
Yeah. So what feeling? What is do you mean, like a specific feeling of when you're creating something, or any kind of feeling, or trying to evoke that feeling in a certain way?
Yeah, that's so. I mean, creativity is an interesting word, isn't it? Because anytime you are making something from nothing, you are creating officially. But there are some times when I can make something and not feel like I'm being creative. And then there are other times where I'm in the flow, so sometimes, say, when I'm writing, it just all falls out and it flows and it's natural, and you're like, oh, this is it, this is creativity, I'm really into it and I'm feeling it. And then other times it's like pulling teeth and you're not getting anywhere, and that doesn't feel like, even though you are creating, you have made something, you've gotten to whatever your tools are and you have made a thing, but afterwards it didn't really feel very creative.
Yeah, I think something similar, actually. Just to me, creativity feels like some sort of magical flow. And
Yeah.
I sort of imagine it's like being filled with golden light, and
Yes.
just all is right with the world. But that's not it doesn't always feel like that.
No. And then that's so, and when you get those moments, you're like, oh yes, this is what it should feel like. But then the times that it doesn't feel like that can be the thing that pushes you away from it, because you're like, well, what if I turn up to my tools and it's going to be one of those days again where the magic doesn't happen.
Yeah, because as you say, like anything can be an act of creation. We are humans. We creating all the time. Making dinner can be an act of creativity, but we don't always see it that way. And sometimes it just feels like we just have to get something done versus actually creating.
Yes, and sometimes I think there's a thing as well with creativity being, yeah, like you say, that flow thing, and not having the pressure to do it. Whereas when it becomes this thing, say, when you're writing a book, they say, sit down and write every day, even if you don't feel like it. And that doesn't feel very creative. It feels, for me, creativity feels like when I just have the inspiration and sit down and it all flows. And I think that, part of that romanticized version of creativity is that's not the reality of how it works to actually get to the end of creating a piece. And then, is creativity about the journey or the feeling of creating, or about having the finished thing at the end, which requires consistency or coming back to it repeatedly? So yeah, it's a really interesting idea of what the definition, or how you define creativity.
And finding a definition that is more inclusive rather than exclusive.
Yeah, exactly. And what it means to you as well. I guess it can mean different things to all of us.
So I know you started your earlier career as a designer and in advertising. Did you find that to be a place where you could express your creativity, or did it feel like a plan B for the real creativity that you didn't feel able to express?
Yeah, I don't think I realized it at the time. So I'd always wanted to be an author. I'd always wanted to write. I felt it in my bones. And I went to do creative writing in year 12, and my English teacher, who had been like, my English teacher and homeroom teacher on and off throughout my whole high school years, said, don't do it. It will require you can't just wing it at the end of the year. You have to consistently write throughout the year and produce work, and I don't think you can do that, so you shouldn't do it. And this teacher, he didn't realize what he was doing, but I really looked up to him and I thought he was amazing, and I just went, he doesn't think I can do it. So then I went on this track of, well, what am I going to do? And I got into marketing and advertising, and then design, which I thought, oh, well, that's creative. And I've had a really interesting, and I guess this comes back to the definition of creativity as well, because what I've learned over that time is, to me, being in design and branding doesn't feel like creativity to me. It feels like understanding a brief, problem solving, and creating something for, so I've just used the word creation, haven't I? But I'm doing it for someone else. I'm not following my inner, like, this is how I feel and I want to express it. It's, this person needs this thing. How am I going to make this thing for them? Which, to me, I guess it is being creative, but it's not my definition of creativity. So it's never felt, it doesn't feel creative to me. I'm happy to produce, I think that's the word, produce something for people. And I've become quite good at interpreting the brief and understanding what they need, so they get something that makes them feel amazing. But what I've come to realize over the years is that doesn't fulfill my creative urge of self-expression.
So yeah, it might look creative, but it doesn't feel creative. So for you, it didn't really, it wasn't fulfilling or satisfying.
I think it's I get satisfaction from seeing my clients happy. So when they say, oh my God, this is everything I've dreamed of, I love this so much, I feel a lot of joy, and I do enjoy it. But I know there's something unfulfilled in me that is also like, but there's something that you want to express that you're still not doing, that your soul needs as well.
Yeah, there's that yearning that can come when it doesn't feel like we're able to express that core part of ourselves at times.
Yeah. So I wonder if there is an element of creativity, or how much comes into that, of self-expression. And I wonder if that might be a 9 thing as well. No, we'll get to that, but that just made me think, I wonder if that's a 9 thing.
Okay. Well, I mean, you can talk about that now. Like, what do you think is what have you learned since discovering that you're a sexual 9? I may have said self-preservation earlier. I can't remember.
No, I think you said sexual, but yeah,
okay.
I'm 9.
All right. Discovering you're a sexual 9. How has that shaped your understanding of your self-expression or your creativity?
Well, the thing that really stood out is 9s can lose themselves, forget themselves. So that element of self-expression, I'm always putting other people first, or making sure other people are happy and seen and heard. And so this self-expression element that is screaming out from the depths of my soul has sort of been forgotten. And that's the thing that I think I realized through the work with you as well, is that that I didn't realize I was doing that. And just that awareness of you are forgetting yourself, and there is something that desperately wants to be spoken and expressed from you, and that's okay. And even starting to be okay with taking up more space is very uncomfortable for me, and going, oh, here I am, this is my thing. It's like, oh, you're taking over the show, you're dominating everybody. So I'm having to work with this feeling of being overpowering and burdensome as I start to express my things, rather than just being a conduit for expressing other people's things.
And so that self-forgetting piece and understanding how that plays into that limiting your self-expression sounds like it was really important for you.
Yeah. And not even realizing that I was doing that. It was so inbuilt into me that I knew there was something not quite right, but I didn't know what it was.
It was really unconscious.
Yeah.
Really unconscious. So now that you sort of know this about yourself, what helps you, or what supports you to try and, push through that self-forgetting and acknowledge that these thoughts and feelings about, being a burden or taking up too much space are part of you doing the work, or doing the inner work to remember and do your self-expression? So what supports you in that process?
Yeah, I think starting, and I'm still, early on in the journey, but really paying attention to what I want and need, like sitting with my feelings instead of pushing down the feelings of what I want and what's important to me, is starting to let those out a bit more and just listen, like, oh, you're feeling this way and this is important to you and you can do this. You're allowed to do this, and you're allowed to have a feeling, and you're allowed to have needs. I'm still figuring it out and approaching creativity quite gently, because I'm scared of sort of chasing it off a little bit. But yeah, that tool of sitting in my feelings and allowing myself to be creative. And also not, I think for many years, because I didn't understand what was going on, I would pressure myself to be creative and berate myself and be like, you want to write. Why aren't you doing it? Like, you're just lazy and you're stupid, and all those self-critical things would come out. And now I've been sitting with it and just going, it's okay. If you feel like being creative, you can. And if you don't, that's okay for today. And just, I'm trying to create a bit of a safety bubble around the idea of creativity, to step back into it, because there's so much pressure from, being, 12 or 13 or 14 years old and wanting to be an author and not doing it for so many years. There's a lot of stuff around that, and it needs to be I think it needs to be addressed gently, which I've not done before.
Yeah, I think I like your little safety bubble. I think that's great. And how emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you're just, being honest with your body and the connection you have with it at the time, because our creativity does come from our body. It is a conduit into, creating something. And so that's what's happening in your inner world. What about is there anything in your outer world that you're using, sort of more concrete or more physically in your home or with the people in your life, that you're using to help support you, either to make art or make stuff, or to help you with maintaining that safety bubble?
What have I been doing? I've been allowing myself to have creative space. So in my house, I have, before I'd be like, I'll put all the creative stuff away. But what I've found is by the time, if I go, oh, I'm going to be creative, by the time I get out whatever I want to be creative with and I set it up, sometimes then the inspiration is gone. So I've allowed myself a bit of a chaotic mess to just leave things out, like to have the pens and the paper and my light box for, stop animation stuff. And I used to, well, I'd say I wanted to be an author, but I've also always loved stop animation. But it would be like, so I would get my light box out to start to do something with it, and I would watch it there, and it'd be like, okay, well, 2 weeks has gone by and you've set it up and it's just sitting there. And then every time I would look at it, I would be angry at it. So now I've just allowed it to be there. I'm like, I've just got my tools are here, they're just ready whenever. So I'm just being okay with being a bit chaotic and leaving the tools out, but not feeling the pressure to use them yet. Sort of like exposure therapy, maybe.
Love it. So you've just mentioned anger there, and I know how important it is for nines to surface their anger. How has getting in touch with your anger helped you with this journey with creativity and creative expression?
Yes, I think it's allowing the anger. Like before it would be, shoving it down. I think when you start to shove, or at least for nines, I'm not sure if it's the same for all the other types, when you start to shove the anger or any of your feelings down, I think, especially if you view creativity as being a self-expression thing, but every time you have anger or shame or any of those negative emotions come up and you force it down, it's blocking that creative thing. So that's, coming back to that idea of me allowing myself to feel my emotions, and to not, as soon as I have that anger, to go, no, we're putting that away, to let it come up and go, just sit with it, or, stomp my feet or scream into a pillow and start to feel those things again. Because well, I find anyway, it's my emotions and feeling my emotions that is where my creativity comes from.
It's helping those to flow.
Yeah.
So you can experience them.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've been discussing this, but in the past, how have you wrangled with creative blocks, dealing with the blank page, or just, not being able to get the creativity out?
With a lot of shame.
Oh no.
A lot of shame, and becoming a shadow artist in a way, like working in a creative field, that I can go, yeah, I'm a creative, I work in a creative field. But I think the way that I have dealt with creative blocks in the past hasn't been very kind to myself. I've either got really frustrated with myself, like, why can't you just do this? What is wrong with you? Which, if you were talking to a child, that's not going to make them do something, is it? So I didn't really have tools for how to work with that. There was no, I don't know, when you're like, don't they say this, when you're a child, you just know how to play and have fun? But I made it just be this really serious thing where there was so much pressure on me that it wouldn't work. And what I've done since working with you as well, and feeling those feelings, is to just try and make it fun, rather than you have to get one page of something written, and if you don't, I mean, you can't be creative, play in that mindset. So I'm experimenting with just allowing things to be fun and playing, and if there's not an outcome that day but I've had fun, then that is a good day.
I love that, and I really appreciate your honesty and reality about how so many times, how we talk about dealing with creative blocks isn't healthy, isn't necessarily us growing and evolving, but, continuing to suffocate ourselves.
Yeah. And I don't know when that happened, or, there was no training. Nobody sort of said, this is how there was, I think at school, there was creative writing, there was art classes about technique, but there was never any classes about what do you do when you get writer's block, or what do you do when you've really messed up a piece and you don't know what to do with it. Like there was not the I don't know, and I don't know if it is needed, but there was not the emotional relationship with art as well as the practical theory and training around it.
Yeah, and mine would be what to do when you're judging someone else's work is better than yours, and
Yes.
the comparing piece, and you think it's awful. That's what I needed help
Totally.
with.
Totally, exactly. You just look at yours and go, oh, that's, I'm never going to get anywhere and it's awful. And then the thing, I think that's a Elizabeth Gilbert thing in Big Magic. That's always stuck in my head and actually helps me as well. About she mentions the tourmaline butterfly, like a creative idea is like this beautiful tourmaline butterfly that you have in your head, and it's the most magnificent thing. You're going to create this beautiful piece, and invariably when it comes out into the real world, it is like this smashed piece of crap that doesn't look anything like the thing in your head. So just knowing that this is a normal part of the creative process has been really helpful to me.
Therapeutic.
Yes, this is like we all go through it. It's never as good as the thing that you have in your head.
Never as good. I'm really curious, what personal and professional creations are you most proud of? The ones that, bring a sort of sense of joy inside of you, no matter how good or bad they were, just the ones that stick out.
Like they're in my professional life, while I did say like there's this yearning in me for self-expression. When I create a brand and I can see that it fully represents the person or the business that it's supposed to represent, there's been those times where you're like, yep, we've nailed that, and that's really beautiful. So that idea and I guess that is self-expression in a way. So when I help someone else express themselves in a way that they couldn't do, it's really satisfying to me. And personally, I guess I have written a book. So I wrote
I've just written a book. I've forgotten that I've written this book, but I have. You're a published author. Yay.
No, it's not published. It's not published. And that's the thing. So I wrote a daily blog. I got divorced 10 years ago, and I wrote an anonymous daily blog about it, and I think I had like 20,000 people following it in the end. And it was the most I felt like I've been able to just express myself, the self-expression of loss and the feelings of it, and overcoming grief and like rediscovering myself, and the people that I met along the way. It was just such a beautiful story, and it's the most satisfying creative experience I've ever had. But I haven't published it, so maybe one day. It's still sitting there, but that is probably the most satisfying creative experience that I've had. Yeah.
Sure. And it wasn't just writing it, it was people saying to you how much they needed to hear it.
Yes. Yeah. That was it. People saying, having women that were like, I didn't think I could go on. Like, I didn't know how I was going to get up tomorrow. And then I read your blog, and I can do another day, or I can do another week, or, it was, it was like, sometimes they say that creativity doesn't come from you, it comes through you. It was that feeling. And I think that that's what was so satisfying about it. It felt like a creative experience that was bigger than myself, or, it was this big creative belonging force for a lot of people, and had impact, I guess, which may be part of creativity. I guess you want your creations to, like, it's partly for ourselves, but partly that it has impact as well. And that's maybe part of the pain of creativity, when you put your soul into something and you create it and then it doesn't have the impact you wanted. That can be a fearful thing, I guess.
Yeah, but it sounds like your writing was really healing for you and for others.
Yeah, yep, it was an incredible creative growing experience. Yeah.
So just to wrap up, could you share with me some of the, the people or the art or the creatives that really inspire you on a daily basis, or just this year that have really set you alight in some way?
Yeah. So the creative things that inspire me really like books, movies and TV shows. Like I will watch certain TV shows or movies, and it may not be a whole movie. It may be a scene in a movie that gives me that feeling. I'm talking about this feeling that I get that I can't even describe it. But when I'm watching TV shows or movies, I get this feeling of this scene, and I'm like, that's what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to create things like that. I can't think of a specific one, but as well, the other things that inspire me, like authors Stephen King and Joe Hill, who are horror novelists. I just love their work, and I've always sort of wanted to be like them. And funnily enough, the thing I've been really inspired by lately are music videos. Yeah,
Okay.
like how the song, sounds and music can evoke so many emotions, and then when you put a visual story to that as well. So I've been watching lots of behind the scenes of how music videos are made lately.
I watched, speaking of that tangent, there's a scene in Top Gun where he's flying Top Gun 2, the second one.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah.
He's flying a fast plane, and someone's done a video explaining how it's the musically like a pop song. It follows this sort of theme or rhythm, and it just blew me away how you could incorporate and understand these different genres together, because it really was a very like emotionally evoking, you get caught up in it very quickly scene, and the role music played in that, but how it was following a very specific structure, which was like a pop song.
I need to see that.
I'll send it to you.
Yes, and speaking of that, that's another thing that I can't get enough of is the creative process. Like when I watch a movie, sometimes how they have how this movie was made. I enjoy watching that more than the actual movie, or like all my favorite authors, like I said, Stephen King or Joe Hill. Like I go and watch interviews with them and go, what's your creative process? How did it come together? I want to, how did the chapters come together, and where did the ideas come from? Or with the movies, like how did it go? I'm always fascinated with the idea of how something like Tim Burton is somebody else that I like, the movie director, like how his movies come to be and how it was an idea, and then all the people that get involved. Like, yeah, that just really inspires me as well, seeing other people's creative. I wish there was a TV network, like Netflix, that was just how creative things are made. Oh, just like a master class, I guess, of like how all the creative things are made. I want that to be a thing.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your version of creativity and what it means to you. And thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I'll send you some links. We'll talk soon.
Yes, that sounds good. Excellent.